Hey everyone, it's Bob Pulver again. Elevate Your AIQ. We are on site at HR Tech 2025, and I have the pleasure of talking to Mr. David Malloy from Findem. How you doing today, David?
Doing great, Bob. How are you? And
Doing great.
awesome.
Doing
Thanks
great.
for having
Yeah,
me on.
it's a good show so far. Yeah, why don't we just kick things off? Want to hear a little bit about your background and what brought you to Findem? You've only been there, what, 4 months
Yeah,
or
about
so?
4 months. Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, give us your little backstory.
Yeah. 25 plus year practitioner. I'm leading talent acquisition functions, primarily at enterprise software companies. Some of them you've heard of, SAP, Oracle, some you may have not. And for Nutanix was the last.
I know all those companies.
Oh, very, very
Yeah.
good. So Nutanix was my last role as practitioner. So we had decided to go down the path about 3 years ago and figure out this AI stuff. I had a hunch it was maybe more than just a fad. We had some other, circumstances that were kind of leading us in a different direction, cost constraints and different pressures, along with a mandate from our board to figure out how to operationalize AI. So we wanted to be first in. So we went down a path of full transformation, and we ended up selecting Findem. We looked at kind of all of the vendors that were out there in this space. I really didn't know any of them. I had been on the same vendors a lot of other companies had just for many,
Okay.
many years. So we went through a comprehensive review and, looked at everything from compliance to user experience to you name it. And Findem for us ended up coming up as the top. And I think we really placed a bet on our perception of what the post-sale care and feeding was going to be, the
Yeah.
relationship, and the ability to have a direct line into product and into the CEO, just kind of talk about the product as it evolves and to be able to provide input. So we placed that bet. It paid off very well for us. So we went through a full transformation, and it was hard because you're in habits for so many years of doing the same things.
Yeah.
I guess the end result was we ended up with just phenomenal results. So much so that Hari and I, that's the CEO of Findem, ended up just kind of getting to know each other over a period of a couple of years. And I think I woke up one morning and realized that, my passion around driving the transformation and kind of like this whole new opportunity in front of us was probably overtaking, my day job. And
Yeah.
one thing led to another, and here I am.
So, when we think about the scope of this transformation and some of your prior experiences, I have a lot of enterprise transformation experience myself. How do you think about like this transformation with AI and augmented intelligence and agentic and I mean it's a lot for the average
Yeah.
person to absorb, and people struggle to figure out, well, even if they're willing to learn, they're not sure what skills to attain, what tools to get comfortable with. So it puts a lot of pressure, obviously, on an organization to, if they want to achieve, success with this, significant transformation. It's probably there's lessons to be learned from prior transformations, but certainly there's more to it. I feel.
Yeah, it's big. It's nebulous. I think people aren't sure what's real, what's not real, what's hype and what's not hype. I think if I kind of really zoom out and think about transformation, it starts with the mindset. So what I see kind of unfolding in corporate right now is a pressure to figure out AI, right? So as it pertains to our function, talent acquisition, it seems to be one of the more obvious areas, right? You see it like in middleware coding, you see it in talent acquisition, and the mandates are coming down from the top to the head of HR, figure it out, come up with a people strategy that involves AI, and then that pressure in turn is kind of putting on the shoulders of the TA leaders. I think what makes it particularly difficult right now is leaders are being asked to do things they've never been asked to do before, tech stack evaluations and compliance stuff. I think it really starts with the mindset that change is change. I think one of the biggest challenges I see and we also have heard the stats about companies that have operationalized it effectively. It's like a percent or something like that. What I see is that companies are going out, they're buying these new tools, and then they're just kind of operating with the same way that they always did with their previous tools. So if you think about it, if like in the case of Findem, we automate sourcing completely. So we know recruiters spend 85% of their time in sourcing or related administrative functions. So if we're going to take the burden from them, well, how are they spending their time?
Yep.
Right. So we talk about reducing the high effort, low value work, and really let them focus on the strategic work, the stuff that really makes the difference with the candidate, um, which is really kind of, I think, creating that indelible experience for the candidate, really setting your company's brand apart and taking the time to really kind of sell and storytell, kind of the way we used to,
Yeah.
bringing that back a little bit. So I think we got a lot of lift, but it's a lot. And I think also, when you take a look at even things like what is the DNA of a modern recruiter? 15 years ago, if I was looking to hire a recruiter, I may ask about their Rolodex, which is the thing we just don't talk about
Right.
anymore, right? You don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
So if there are specific skills that aren't really in demand now, the question is, which are the skills that are in demand, and what are the skills that the recruiters today need to come up to speed on to stay relevant within their careers?
Yeah, I've had quite a few conversations about that even in the last 36 hours at the show here, just thinking about, yes, we do want AI literate, employees, and we want to starting to see that more and more on job descriptions, when we're hiring, net new employees. But there's a lot of, what some would call durable skills, the innately human skills
Yeah.
that no matter how AI advances, if you're deploying AI, responsibly and fairly, then there's some things that maybe we should just leave to the humans to.
I think so too. I think that AI and technology is the force multiplier, really, again, to automate those things that are high effort, low value, and really let you become strategic. I don't know many recruiters who would say, "Oh yeah, I've got plenty of time in my day." It's like always overloaded. And when we think about ethical AI and just the positive impact all the way around, I think about what it looks like today. This is we're in an employer-driven market. You post a role, you get 1,000 applications in a day,
Yeah.
right? And without technology, simply just you cannot sift through that pile effectively. For us, I mean, we'll sit on top of a company's ATS, and when we do our searching and our sourcing, we start with who already has applied, right? That's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Stats show that 85% of the folks that you end up hiring are somewhere within your network anyhow, right? So we kind of have this flywheel of sources where we combine everything, and we'll start with the actives.
Yeah.
Secondly, we'll take a look at the folks that are within your database, maybe haven't applied to this, have been sitting dormant, and kind
Yeah.
of so on and so forth. So recruiters, because of the time constraints, will generally start out and they will go through as many candidates as they need to get their 3 to 5 submits, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got 1,000 applicants and it only takes the first 100, what happens to the other 900? And those are real numbers,
Yeah.
right? So they either get ghosted or they get an immediate reject, which feels like it was never a real opening in the first place. So this
Yeah.
feeling it wasn't a level playing field. You also miss out on the full diversity of the pool, right? We're only looking at a subset of those candidates. We're able to analyze the entire pool and then kind of bucket into, think of it like good, better, best, right? We don't stack rank. There's a lot of legislation in different areas
Yeah.
where you can't. So I think ethically, it's we treat you fairly. We protect your data, and we have to continuously audit the algorithms to make sure there's not bias introduced.
That's right.
So we've got a smart group of folks keeping an eye on that for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, responsible AI is one of my focus areas. So kudos for staying on top of that. I think it's really important, not just from a legal and financial risk standpoint, but just from a reputational risk. The trustworthy bar has been raised, I feel like, and so I think, from a reputation perspective, from a employer brand perspective, and just signals to the market, this is a company that is being responsible by design, and
Yeah.
for at least the short term, that is, I view as a competitive advantage to a degree.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So what else has been going on at Findem? I mean, I know you guys are always finding ways to improve the platform. Anything newsworthy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a couple of things. I think about some of the more recent use cases for us or partnerships. I guess one that's super noteworthy is our partnership with Recruit Military
Okay.
that we entered into in May. And Recruit Military is an organization that works with transitioning, servicemen and women to come from the military into private sector
Hmm.
roles. So for years, they worked to try to map out what were the skills within the military, how do they translate into the the private sector, and it was super difficult to do. So within our partnership, we have mapped those skills and helped like explain and describe. We have 3D data, which really just kind of provides a lot of context for
Okay.
a candidate's background, but that will explain to if you don't know what a machinist mate is, which many may not, what does that mean in the corporate world, right? Or if somebody was a mechanic who worked on a helicopter and you're a company that's very pro veteran hiring, but you don't have helicopters, you may think there's not an opportunity, right? So we're able to show a path into a half a dozen different roles that require those same skills and translate what level that would
Right.
relate to, within private sector. And that's new, but it's off and running. And I mean, it's just being received so incredibly well. We just signed another partnership with a nonprofit within the last couple of weeks. So I think you're going to see
Nice.
more things like that coming out.
Yeah.
6 months or a year ago, we may not have thought about the opportunity and how we use data with recruit military. So I really feel like there's just infinite opportunity out ahead of us.
I always have felt like the ability to do that type of skills inference, or even more broadly, like this, looking at, uh, like I said, you may not have a fleet of helicopters that need maintenance, but you've got other similar, um, tasks that need to be done. Maybe there's some similarities to, I don't know, an automotive fleet, or like whatever. I don't know all the skills and tasks that might be involved, but it just, to me, it augments someone's own sort of perception of what they're capable of, and they may not think systemically around, well, I wonder, if this would be something that I could be good at, right? So sometimes you have to meet them in the middle somewhere where they just aren't aware of their own potential in a way.
Yeah, we're helping them
Yeah.
to be seen in a way that they wouldn't have
Yeah.
before. And I mentioned 3D data, and I'll just kind of talk about it in the
Yeah.
regular corporate sense. But I get asked a lot of time what makes us different from other companies. I guess a couple of things. One is we have the largest labeled data set that exists as it pertains to skills and attributes of human beings, right? So the data that we have been consuming, up to I guess this time has
Mm.
been built for human consumption, not for AI consumption, right?
Okay.
So that's a huge differentiator for us. And then when we talk about a 3D profile, when you think about traditional resumes or a profile like on a LinkedIn or whatever, a
Mhm.
lot of most of it's self-disclosed, right? I've seen a lot of instances where people who were in organizations of mine in the past, years later, have promoted themselves. They were a vice president. I was a senior director there, which is
Okay.
pretty funny to see. But part of what we do is we will take a look at an employee's journey with a company, and we will kind of overlay the company's performance data, whether that's headcount, growth or shrinkage, financial, data to see what happened during the time period that the employee worked there.
Okay.
Were these years of growth? Were they years of decline? And we really kind of take a look at what have they endured. So part of, I mean, I guess the interviewing is all about mitigating risk, right? Trying to predict a behavior coming in the door and to predict if they're going to be successful. And I use our head of HR, Amanda, as an example. If I take a look at what her background was, prior to joining us, she had been at a company that had 150 people, and they tripled in a year. So they went from 150 to 450. She moved to larger companies. She went through COVID, the Great Resignation. So you can see those headcount numbers. Just all the different. It was tough for a lot of people. And what's interesting when I look at her background, she was promoted like 3 times within those periods. So she thrived in those, and she didn't just survive. She excelled. And when we take a look at where we're at in our growth, we're around that same employee count, sub 200 right now. We're looking at meteoric growth.
Yeah.
And so we've got somebody contextually who's seen the things that they're going to see here, the ups and the downs of a startup,
Yeah.
who can tackle a lot of things. So, and then as we grow larger, has worked in larger entities as well. So for us, it gives us a lot of confidence that it's a really good match for us all the way around the
Yeah.
board. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Um, the transformation, obviously, people, behavior change, these are critical aspects. I mean, how does Findem think about, like, the AI readiness of everyone? I mean, is it just Um, is it easier because you've got AI sort of embedded in the platform, and you guys drink your own champagne, and people are just naturally sort of innovative around what it can do, what it can't do, things like that, or is AI literacy and readiness still something that to make sure everyone knows what they can do, what they can accomplish? There's still some upskilling and some learning that everyone
Yeah.
is privy to.
When we take a look at some of the industries where you're starting to see, AI, really kind of move in, Harvey with law or
Hmm.
Clay with BDRs, this is on top of very, kind of versely understood processes or rules or laws. With talent acquisition, there's really never been standardization with the industry. If
Hmm.
you interview 100 heads of talent acquisition, you'll get 100 different approaches to it, right? I think part of the reason why is that it's a fairly new function within corporate. I mean, they had, the personnel department way back when, but talent acquisition is what, 30, 40 years old, whereas some other corporate functions have been around for, 1,000 years, like
Yeah.
like a CFO. So there's no linear path into it. There's very little curriculum at the university level taught around recruiting. There's no
Yeah.
recruiting degrees.
Yeah.
So we have people from all different walks that come in, and some are very business oriented and some are very technical. So everyone kind of takes their own approach to it. So I think what I'm seeing is in terms of being, ready to absorb. A lot of folks aren't using metrics yet, things like that.
Yeah.
So if you're not, you kind of really don't know where you're starting from. It's difficult to kind of measure how far you've gone.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that, again, as I mentioned, we're automating so much of the process. Yet what I see is recruiting organizations are still built the same, right? The capacity model is still done the same.
Yeah.
The recruiter, the job description for a recruiter, you can find a recruiting job these days,
Right.
is still the same. Yet so much has changed. Why are we not adapting? So I think the technology is outpacing our ability to adapt workflows, capacity models to really take a look at what is the DNA of a modern recruiter or a modern recruiting leader, where you have to be kind of part technologist, part compliant person, part, all these different things.
Yeah.
So I think it's shining a huge light, onto the into the industry right now. And I think we talk a lot about earning a seat at the table. I think this is the opportunity.
Yeah. I think for recruiting teams in particular, when it comes to AI literacy, I mean, I guess there's a how do I use the right tool? I mean, obviously they presumably have access to find them if they were um, sourcing talent and going through those steps and those tools. But on the it's particular, I guess the responsible AI angle is particularly important for them to understand, just because there are tools out there that will stack rank and score and things like that. And so if they've been audited for adverse impact, that's great, but we still need people to understand that it's not a calculator, it's not giving you deterministic and singular right answer, and that your critical thinking, your judgment is still um, important. In fact, it needs to ultimately be your decision. Otherwise, we've got a bigger problem.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think that technology is what gives us the edge to be human with the candidates, right? To spend the extra time to really get to know them, to really convey what's special about your company's mission and vision and your culture. Not to prep,
Yeah.
candidates come in, they may have the skills, but they don't necessarily know the cultural norms, of your company. So
Sure.
I think that by reducing the administrative stuff, I mean, that's kind of how we balance technology and people, where it's kind of art meets science, is human beings are still making the decisions and using judgment, of who moves forward in the process. I think the technology is simply helping us to move to the strategic discussions a little bit quicker than we would have in the past,
Mm.
in what is a much better experience for, I mean, generally everybody involved. When we were looking to rebuild our tech stack, I mean, there's always a focus on candidate experience and hiring manager experience, but we really wanted to index on the recruiter experience. So anybody who led a talent acquisition team through the Great Resignation was, you were losing a recruiter a day. It was unbelievable. So we were really indexing on their experience, thinking if we could create a tech stack that was just so innovative, so great to use, right? Where it just let them do the things that they should hopefully love to do since they're in this profession.
Mhm.
could the tech stack maybe for the first time be a retention mechanism? Right, kind of unheard of because all the recruiters are always kind of complaining about the technology.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that pretty consistently over the last few years. Um, no, I think that's a great way to approach it. I mean, is the company giving the people the tools, the appropriate tools to do their job most effectively? And I just think it makes a tough job a little bit easier if you've got the right tools at your disposal. And so I do think that experience matters. And it's always a balance sometimes as you think about, yes, I want to have an ideal, aspirational, customer, excuse me, candidate experience, but there are other journeys, there are other experiences that need to be managed as well, and understanding some of the trade-offs there. And as you alluded to before, what are the metrics? What are the right metrics to make sure that we're moving in a constructive direction and that people are incentivized the right way?
I think it's a the adoption curve. It's a crawl, walk, run, depending on where you're at, how mature you are in the process already. And
Hmm.
I think about think about how we began to use Excel for the first time. You learn that basic functionality, how to highlight a column and add it. And then someone says, "Hey, you can make a chart." And then as you become proficient in the basics, then you start to take a look at the next level. What can I can do a pivot table. I can do these different things. So I think that the amount of technology we have an impact is it could almost be overwhelming, right?
Yeah,
So for us, it's start out. A lot of companies are looking for an alternative for sourcing. Super. So we'll address that need, and then, as you master that, then we will, introduce you to the other things that you can do, whether it's talent mapping or just the different things that you can do to have your function show up more strategically.
yeah. Oh, that's great. The On the people who have applied before, um, so I mean, when you do your sourcing within Findem, you've got some talent like rediscovery
Yeah, yeah.
capabilities too,
Yep,
right?
yep. So we'll sit on top of an ATS,
Hmm.
and silver medalists, we call them, are like
Yeah,
14 times more likely. You've already taken the time, you've already generated the interest, they've already been
yeah,
through the process. The difference between I would say like in an Olympic race, first place and second place is it's fractions of a second. I think what the other thing that we do that is really, really interesting is especially for the really thin skill set you're looking for. So imagine today you're recruiting for a position. It's really tough, right? Maybe you come up with 7 or 8 candidates, you make a hire. 2 years later, that person gets promoted, moves on, whatever else, you need to refill that position again. So most of the time you're going back to just from to point A again, right?
mm,
Those 7 or 8 people that are in your database, the information would be stale and outdated. We actually refresh that data constantly. So if one of those folks they're sitting in your ATS,
mm.
they make a move, we capture it. They get a new certification, we capture it. So you do the work one time and get them in the database. We continuously refresh that so you have fresh data and don't have to start the search from scratch every
Nice.
time.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I never really understood the obsession with the job posting, and let's just cast a net and let's just see what we get in. And it's sort of a first in first out kind of thing, like we're gonna, and people are maybe less apt to apply if they already see on LinkedIn that people have 200 people have already clicked apply in the first 2 hours, or whatever it is. But you know there's plenty of passive candidates, and there's plenty of great candidates who have already, to your point, already sort of crossed your path. They've expressed interest in the company. You could probably tell by the source of the original application of whether they applied. I don't know if you can tell if they use a mass apply tool. Obviously, that would be a weaker signal that there's actual interest
Yeah.
and find them. But I just think you've got to cast as big a net as possible and find some of these, as you guys are already doing, into some of these, working with some of these philanthropic organizations. There's a lot of potential out there, and just posting a job and hoping the right people apply is already throwing off this sort of matchmaking exercise.
I'll tell you and it works both ways. So if you ask a recruiter, the biggest challenge or leader right now, it's oh my gosh, this influx of candidates is absolutely insane. Yet, per your point, they'll go out and they'll put a posting up, and like 90% of the folks who apply are, for one reason or the maybe in the wrong location, maybe they don't have the right skill set, maybe they just mass applied and spammed, right? But the same thing is happening in reverse, which is we're not necessarily targeting,
Yeah.
the right jobs to the right folks. So I don't know if you're like me, but I'll get a text on my phone telling me I've been selected. I think it'd be great to be a warehouse manager for Amazon. I'm like, how did this happen? There used to be a time where when you got an email about a role, it was like an actual, they knew who you were, they were
Yeah.
interested, you would get excited. And then it got to the point where every means of communication will be used to spam you jobs that aren't a fit. You just kind of tune out,
Yeah.
right? So I think that the matching is something that works both ways. And I do agree. Why would you post a role and have to sift through most of the applicants that aren't going to be a match? It's a bad experience for them. It's a bad
Yeah.
experience for the hiring manager. Versus, just within our campaigns, we can literally deliver it right into, their email, a specific role that is a really tightly, matched to what their skill sets are.
Yeah.
It just does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot more work to do on that front, but yeah, there's just still there's a lot of nonsense that goes on in this space, and it just seems like the same way that when we think about like AI transformation, and that people need to think beyond automation, beyond individual productivity, and take this a bigger lens to how do we fuel team effectiveness, organizational growth, innovation, things like that. In the same way, we need people in the talent acquisition space to sort of rethink, am I doing this because I'm in my comfort zone here and this is the way it's done,
Yeah.
or am I going to rethink ultimately what are the outcomes that I really want to start tracking, and what behaviors and tasks and changes to my process do I actually want to um, uh, fix to align myself towards those right
Yeah, and I think also
outcomes.
if you zoom out a little bit and you ask yourself, like, how am I aligning the activities of my recruiting organization to the overarching company goals?
Yeah.
Are we are rowing the boat in the same direction? I think being able to help impact, look at the company level, which I can give an example. In my last role, I was at a company where we had never begun a fiscal year at full headcount for our quota carrying sales reps. Right, it was a big team,
Yeah.
7-figure quota for each of them, and you would go into a fiscal year 30 to 50 down. So you're immediately at risk of 50 to whatever $1 million worth of quota. We got so dialed in with our sourcing, and we also use data. Like right now, I see a lot of teams use it in one of two ways. They use it as a look back. Hey, here's what we did last quarter for you,
Hmm.
or a snapshot. We have X amount of openings. These are the candidates. But what they don't do is look at that data and the trends year after year to see every, whatever, maybe it's after a bonus cycle or after a stock fest or after a whatever. At the same, January every single year, you get hit with 100 requisitions. Okay, we know it's coming. You know how long it takes to fire and excuse me to find and to onboard a recruiter or a contract, whatever.
Yeah.
So like if you know it's coming in January, start building your teams up in October, right? If we're really going to be in service to the business. But um, after we had implemented Findem, our beginning of our fiscal year was the first time we went into the fiscal year at full headcount ever. We crushed our numbers,
Yeah.
and our company had a couple of different key goals. One was a top line revenue, so we could really tie our activities to impact there, right? We didn't sell the software, but we filled all of the seats so they could be sold, right?
Yeah.
And then we also had a bottom line target as well. And when I think about what we did from a consolidation and a spend perspective, we were looking down the barrel of like a 70% increase over our current tools, which was a 7-figure spend, right? We ended up cutting that significantly down. And we also, because of some of the additional functionality that Findem had, we were able to sunset a couple of products. It's the other thing, toggle fatigue or tool fatigue. Recruiters are, as companies grow, they kind of bubble gum and duct tape the tech stack together, and you're working
Yeah.
out of all kinds of different tools. So the end of the story there was we were able to avoid a massive price increase and show a $500,000 a year in cost savings. It just doesn't happen. And when you're talking to the business about the impact of a dollar saved versus a dollar earned, right? 500,000 bottom line saving could be the equivalent of 5 million in top line sales.
Yeah.
So again, we're able to maybe for the first time really tie what we're doing and show how we're helping the company or value add, right? If you're not adding value, then maybe you're viewed as a cost, to the cost center
Yeah.
kind of a thing or an expense, versus really being viewed as a strategic partner that's helping you meet and reach the objectives at the top level.
I think the SAP Success Factors acquisition of Smart Recruiters was a signal for many that we are acknowledging that talent acquisition is a strategic function,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
need to pay more attention and make those investments. And I think those investments are not just in the technology; it's the talent. It's the upskilling necessary to make sure that people are prepared for this next sort of giant transformation journey. But your business and technology strategies don't execute themselves. I mean, you've got to have a sound, talent strategy, and you've got to look, in every direction, internally, uh, silver medalists, and all the talent pools externally. Um, there's a lot of variability in the nature of the employment contract, right? You've got contractors and consultants and freelancers and things like that. So there's a lot of things that need to come together to make sure the company is um, able to execute on that overarching strategy. And so it seems logical to folks like us that talent acquisition should be considered a strategic function. And yeah, it's just taken a circuitous route for us to acknowledge it, but I think it's happening.
I think it's going to be just a fascinating next 12 to 18 months. I mean, you see all of the HR tech companies looking to, horizontally expand. They want
Yeah.
more of the life cycle from, all the way from rec planning all the way through, to onboarding and from hire to retire.
Hmm.
And then you see the big enterprise software companies that want to also add on to their suite. They want to own this space as well. So
Yeah.
I think the landscape, maybe 18 months from now looks very different than it does today.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, David, this has been great. Thank you so much for spending some time with me at the show. I know you're a busy guy. You're in high demand. No, I really, really appreciate it. And congrats on all of Fundem's success. And I'm glad your first couple months are off to a good start. And yeah, best of luck to you.
Oh, thanks so much. I had a pleasure being on today. We should do it again in 6 months from now and compare notes on what
Yeah.
changed. I bet a lot.
Yeah, that's the deal.
All right.
All right. Thanks again,
Thanks
Dave.
so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.